Okay, I think we're working here. Let's we're gonna freaking go with what we have here. We're
Right.
trying to do this podcast for gentle discipline right now. We have already run into massive technical issues this morning, but yeah, we're gonna adapt and overcome as we do. I've got Travis Crutcher here, which I am so freaking excited to talk to my long lost warrior friend, Travis Crutcher. He's got 20 plus years service in the military and the infantry, spent time in the corporate world outside of that, and then has made a transition into coaching, consulting, speaking. We're going to get into all of that. With these podcasts, I love to move through kind of like where you've been, where you are now, where you're going. And I think with you in particular, my friend, we have a lot of shared history and at least worth talking about. We're skimming over maybe. But yeah, I think where you've been is quite a doozy. So yeah, welcome to the podcast, man. We'll kind of start there.
Dude, I'm stoked. I'm stoked not just because you know, that we're actually alive now. We're trying to figure this out, but I'm really stoked because it's an opportunity for me to reconnect with you, and when it all kind of came together and I saw what you've been up to, I'm like, no freaking way. It didn't surprise me that you were doing what you were doing, but I was just surprised that I hadn't noticed it before. And I think it's just different platforms, different algorithms. But I'm fired up to be here, man. This is where I've been. That's going to be fun to discuss. We've been to some of the same spots and we've encountered some of the same people. So really, how transparent do you want to get, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, all the way transparent. Part of your thing too, and mine is radical honesty and truth. So, dude, I totally agree too with this kind of incidental rediscovery of each other, kind of working in the space. And it's funny because at some point, yeah, that algorithm suggested us to each other, and I was like, no shit, man, that's freaking Travis. This is like old section leader of mine, like from I guess 14, 15 years ago now.
Yeah, dude, and what's really wild about it is you and I, if you recall, sir, we actually discussed doing a podcast together. And we discussed this in the thralls of chaos. And what I mean by chaos is we were surviving one hot cash's driving of a Humvee together.
Gosh.
Oh, bless his
Oh my God. Okay, now so we got to provide context here for sure. So this would have been, I guess, 2012,
Yeah.
2012, and I had taken over as the mortar platoon leader for 138 Infantry, and Hot Cash was my de facto platoon sergeant, Charles Grigley, who is just one of the more interesting characters I've ever met in my life. He was hot cash because he would record rap videos. Mind you, he's like a 5'3" white guy from Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
recording rap videos under the pseudonym Hot Cash.
Yeah. And yeah, it was always an adventure, man. Riding with him as the driver in a Humvee. It was look, we've both done some dodgy things in our lives. That might be the closest to death I've ever felt. It was crazy. It was like Mr. Toad's wild ride.
He was a special guy. That whole so it's so crazy, right? Because that moment in my life was so wild. It was so wild. It was I was young, I was 23, I think, 23.
Yeah.
And we had just found out we were going to Panjwai, Afghanistan, very like kinetic place in Afghanistan. Um, and I had lost my platoon sergeant, my original platoon sergeant. First of all, the only experience I had with mortars at the time was MLOC, was a mortar leaders course. Which okay, like tell me to get in front of a mortar tube again, like there's no chance. So I'm
I
head.
that course, man. It's just like Pathfinder, where it's just drinking from a fire hose and your retainability of any of that. I mean, by the time you finish LHMBC in the last live fire, plotting board's Greek, dude.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
complete nonsense.
Yeah, plotting board is a term I have not even thought about in a decade or plus. So,
Sorry, I brought it back.
no, it's great. This is what there's going to be a lot of memories coming back here, which is fun. But yeah, I mean, the whole point of that is like I had no, I really had to rely on senior NCOs in the platoon for all of that technical knowledge and experience. I was heavily reliant on that, um, which I think is kind of intended a lot of the times, but right before we deployed, man, we had a streak of losing all three top NCOs, the three top NCOs in the platoon, to really crazy medical diagnoses with
Weird, man.
Yeah, it was really wild, and so, the platoon sergeant, Sergeant Jaden, he had cysts in his knees, he couldn't deploy, and then there was
Yep.
Chris Bell, who had the brain tumor, which was so freaking sad, and then there was you, if you wanna talk about, you were supposed to be the backfill next.
Yeah, so what was crazy about that, man, is, like, I was feeling a little left to center for maybe a week, week and a half leading up to that,
Mhm,
and, and we knew Chris was gonna be there. We didn't know what Chris's diagnosis was at the time, but Sheffy
mhm,
and I were like, "Dog, you gotta go to the doctor,"
mhm.
right? And so he finally relented and went, and it was not good news. Daywin,
I
on the
was
other
there for that. I'll tell you that, I mean, that was insane, like, 'cause everyone was kind of, like, taking their turn because he was having seizures in his arm, and he
yeah, he we were in the motor pool one day, dude, and he's like, he had one of those little things again. I'm like, "Dog, that's kinda like a petit mal seizure." He's like, "No." I'm like, "You should probably just go
Mhm.
get checked out, brother." And sure enough, he was having just a series of small seizures, like, all flipping day, dude.
Yep. So he got put on that driving profile, and then,
Yep.
and we were taking turns driving him to appointments and stuff, and I will never forget, man, because I was already, freaking out about losing my platoon sergeant, and
Yeah,
I was very, very nervous about what was going on, and so then I'm sitting there in the parking lot of the hospital, and he says, "Hey, sir, can you come in? Can you come in here?" And I'm like, "Ah, fuck!" Like he's not gonna be. He's got. I thought epilepsy, right? Like I thought for
yeah.
sure. Immediately my brain goes there, and I walk in to that hospital room, and he just goes, "I have a fucking brain tumor,"
Yeah,
and
man.
like, just, immediate, reaction, and so and it's funny because him and I talked about this moment, after the fact, and I was like, "Oh, that's it, man? It's all good," and I played it off, and,
Sure.
what else I have no idea where that reaction came from, but it's funny because hearing it from him later on, he's like, "I can't think of another reaction that would have been better than that," there is no good reaction other than, there is no good reaction, but whoa, like, what a moment. Yeah.
But that was so much of Chris's personality too, dude.
Mhm.
Like, he he was a freak. He was a freak, man. Kid lived in the gym. His entire diet was creatine and protein. He was just a monster, and he was one of those cats that would just push through. And what's really wild, like, once you guys were overseas and subsequently had to stay back that we can talk about briefly, but, like, y you know, he would check in with me. I remember he came in one day. My boy had a tan line on his face.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Chris, how long since you shaved it for today, brother?" He's like, "Oh, it's been months." I'm
Yeah.
like, "You don't have to, dude. Like, just send me a text. I know you're doing your thing." But, he was still like, it was after the second brain surgery, he was still going back to the gym. I'm like, "You gotta dial it back a little bit, player," you
He's
know?
he's he's a monster, man. He was a monster, and I remember after we had gotten back, me and basically who the real platoon sergeant ended up being, Tony Sheffy. He like, who's just my brother to this freaking day. I love him so much. But so him and I went drinking out with Chris Bell, and we went to the Oak Tree, and we went hard in the paint as we used to do in those days.
Yeah,
Shot in beer, shot in a beer, shot in a beer. And Tony and I, we wake up in the morning. I'm on the floor by the couch. Tony's on the couch right above me. We flip on Running Man, and we're watching Running Man at whatever time o'clock in the morning it is. And Chris, who went round for round with us, the night before, he's at his chemotherapy appointment in first
yeah.
degree. I'm
He's
like,
a
man,
monster, dude.
this is the strongest person I've ever met in my life.
But, yeah, and so then we knew Chris was out of the net, and then, uh, Jaden here's the deal, dude, like, I knew something was up, but I had no idea he
Yeah.
wasn't deploying
Hmm.
until, like, days before when he pulled all of us in the office. The I love the man to death, right? Solid human being, the bridges were all mended between he and I before it was all said and done, but, like, it was weird because, Hot Cash was the section sergeant, and I put that in massive air quotes because we all know who was running that bitch, but anyway, he was the section sergeant, and so, like, the echelon of control should have gone to him, but instead, like, all 3 of us in the room, he's like, "You're the platoon sergeant." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Didn't like that because it did kinda usurp greatly, which kinda bothered me just from a leadership perspective, but so, okay, cool. 2 days before deployment, I'm platoon sergeant, not a problem. Let's go do this thing. And I remember texting you. I'm like, dude, something is no bene.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Jess take me to the hospital because I already been once, and they were like, we don't know what's going on. They thought it was appendicitis, couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
And so she takes me back, and I had you. I was like, grab all my stuff, dude. Like,
Mm,
I'll just meet guys at the airfield and we'll bounce because I'm thinking they're gonna give me some drugs, put me on an aircraft, I'm good to go. And they actually pulled Jess aside and asked, like, was he trying to kill himself with pills?"
mm,
And bless her little heart, dude, she goes, "He's been in the infantry for well over a decade. Do you think he would try pills? Like, really?" And so she was like, "No, he's stoked. He's excited for this deployment. He really wants to go." And long story short, I wasn't going anywhere. Ended up doing, 7 months of my own kind of chemotherapy, which was really fun. But it was such, it was one of those things. I remember the guys like they would text me and whatnot, for who was it? Dick Davis, man. He was like,
yeah.
I'm dreaming of the day where you come off a Black Hawk like Spawn with the, I'm like, dude,
Oh,
I right, but all things considered, brother, like, and I knew Tony would take care of you, and you had Chad, and you had, Dave, so you had solid NCOs, but it is a tough spot as a young platoon leader in charge of a specialty platoon
mm.
in a hostile environment, an asymmetrical hostile environment as
No.
well, right? That's dodgy, man.
It was really crazy, man, and I mean, I was drinking every day, out in the office, outside of the office. I was drinking so hard, and that was where I was putting that angst, that is where alcohol problems really began for me, was right before that, and, yeah, very interesting to look back at now, but, I mean, now, we just got it's funny, I came back from that deployment, and that deployment was, um I mean, it's one of the most transformational, times of my life, as most deployments to a war
Right.
zone probably are. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like with those NCOs, particularly, Chad Bush, Dave Jocelyn, Tony Sheffy, those three guys. I mean, they pulled so much weight. But they also, like, the young kids that we brought over. I mean, including myself, right? We were kids, and I had
Yeah,
a platoon
sure.
full of 18-year-olds, and when you look at the pictures before, like as we were going, and then you look at the pictures when we came back, I mean, there is just so much, I guess the word's development, maybe, that happens over that time period.
Trauma.
Yeah, a little bit of trauma, but, yeah, just insane, man. Just a really, 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 really strange time, and, yeah, you were definitely missed over there, like, not having that NCO presence, because it was hot cash that was going to, the first sergeant and the sergeant major, and losing every battle that he tried to fight over there, which put a lot of ownership on me, and, which is okay, I think I tried to rise to the occasion. I think I did, but what an event all that was, man. What an event.
I will say though, like in G Money's defense, man,
Mm.
I think I might be one of 3 people on planet Earth that Brittner actually likes.
Yeah, yeah.
He's not warm and fuzzy kinda guy. So that may have helped long term, but, you guys did really well, and that was the one thing, like, every day I'm thinking about Jocelyn I'll come back with my ting ting legs. I'm like, "Bitch, you better come back with all your real legs."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and we lost another one. Remember we lost another one, but I got his ass back.
Oh, you're talking about Mr. AWOL.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if you I would love to hear that story on air. This is one that I'm not intimately familiar with, because I just laughed about that the whole time.
So I won't even say that fool's name because he doesn't deserve any kind of life credit, right? But we had a kid. It was the week before deployment. We were doing our final room inspections to make sure everything was straight. They were all packed up and everything. When we go into this kid's room, he was one of Jocelyn's kids,
Mhm,
actually.
mhm.
Go in this kid's room and he's gone. It's obvious. Its place is trash. No one get a hold of him, right? He takes off. And in those situations, for folks who are listening who aren't aware, like, there's not a lot we can do as a command team when they do that. We just kind of have to wait it out. It's almost like a missing person thing. They have to hit a certain time frame before we can actually start doing UCMJ paperwork. And even then, it's like not a lot of recourse if you can't get local law enforcement involved. And we had no idea where this kid was, right? So you guys bounce. I'm back getting treatment, and they put me on staff duty one night. And Travis gets bored, So I'm actually on Hostile Platoon's Facebook, and I see you guys. I think it was Christmas photos,
Mhm.
right? And you guys are having whatever meal, and it's really cool. And this little guy commented something about hot cash, something about Mr. Big Head. And I was like, oh, game on, son. It's like 11. I got all night, right?
Mm,
So in short order, my friend, I create a completely fabricated Facebook page of a young lady named Tamika White, who
mhm.
lives
I
where
remember.
he is listed his his location at. I quickly like make other connections because I put the high school where, would be local to him, but not his high school. Like, anyway, I catfish the hell out of this kid, right? Before 2 hours goes by, he's giving me his home address. I've convinced him that I'm going to get on an aircraft. But here's the thing: he had it listed he was in Texas,
Mhm.
and so I put her in Texas. Well, now he's in the Carolinas. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fly there. I'm going to see you tomorrow, boo. Right? And so I call local law enforcement. I'm like, hey, got this kid. He's AWOL. Here's his address. Like, you sure? I'm like, 100,000,000%. And so
Mhm.
I'm on the phone with the sheriff's department when they knock on this kid's door. And the next morning, dude, he was staying in my office in sweats and a smile, just
Yeah.
not happy.
Just dude, what a crazy thing. It's funny because like, hearing that story, we were all just kinda it wasn't funny when it first happened, when he first went AWOL, especially because
Sure.
and right before deployment, it's like, that's a okay, man. Like, that's so cowardly is the word that comes to mind, and letting us down is one thing, but it's just a cowardly move, and it's brutal. But yeah, anyways, hearing that story, it just, like, floods my memory with all of the stupid little things that happen in the infantry that I
Oh, yeah.
think, people on the outside that have never been in the military before or in some situation like that, they don't understand. Like, they see kind of probably what we saw going into the military, this
Sure.
the glory and
Recruiting.
the fighting and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
combat, but they don't see the little stuff. So I'm curious, like, what is your kind of experience of, like, I don't know, do you try to communicate that message? Like, I don't know, it's
I
interesting.
I do it, and the statement that I've come up with, I think that it sums up the best is I always tell people with no experience in that role in that world that if they understood what the typical infantry soldier does to keep himself occupied and entertained while they're not closing with and destroying the enemy, they would be horrified, right? It would counteract anything Reagan said about sleeping peacefully the nights because we do the dumbest stuff, man. I mean, there was a game that I used to play, my very first squad, right? And this is one of those things, you know how this happens, right? This is born from boredom. We're in the field, Fort Lewis, Washington, and there's all these long weeds, right? And my buddy Schropp is asleep, but Schropp always had these crazy nose hairs, man. Like they were part of his mustache, right? And and so I just start sticking this little weed in his nose and he freaks out. And I'm like, see how long you can take it. And he's like, okay. So he flares his nostrils and I'm doing, and this becomes part of our downtime games from
Yeah.
now on. Like, see
Yeah.
how long you can take. And that's the kind of stuff we do. And that's like the mild stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
We had, when it was never when I was an officer, but it's an officer when you're an officer, it's like you try to be like, that identity or whatever. But as a cadet at West Point, oh, it's like game on. You're just a Joe. And like we used to play root the peg and root the peg, you balance a knife on your finger and you flip it and you have to stick the knife into the ground. You go around in a circle. And if you stick it, then you're out, right? And so the last person still remaining in the circle has to root the peg. And what root the peg is somebody puts a shell casing like into the ground. They get one strike to hit it with the back end of the knife and to get it into the ground. And then whoever loses has to root the peg, which means they have to get the shell casing out of the ground with just their teeth.
yeah, sure. No, that makes sense.
It's a great idea, right?
Yeah. We had minutes. Why not?
Normal college experience, I'm sure, for most people. But
Yeah. It's one of those things, I think we all jokingly said while we were on active duty, like, okay, when I leave here, I'm qualified to be a, what do we say, door greeter at Walmart or or a mall cop or whatever, right?
yeah.
And that's, obviously that's not accurate. But the truth of the matter is, man, like the stuff we do to occupy our time is so left of center that most civilians like we're truly not normal. And I mean that in the most endearing possible way. But it's like, we our jokes aren't funny to anybody else.
Mhm.
Anybody else. Right? You can't tell some of the joke. I mean, you can't tell a single Dave Joslin joke in public ever. Ever, right?
The
And I
so this it kind of brings up a really good. I mean, I feel like this has so much, I feel like it's building this, like, a very poignant discussion because, like, I don't know, I think the first question that is resonating for me right now is like, do you think that your time in the military, like, stunted or added to your growth, or maybe a mix of both?
for me personally, and I'm talking all of it, dude. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the crummy leadership, the exceptional leadership, everything in between. I think it. only made me exponentially better than I would be otherwise.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, like one of the big hot buttons, and you and I both, I went to the class for it and became a master resiliency trainer. And it's stuff that I still utilize today, but you become resilient in a different way.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's good news, bad news. It's good news in as much as like a normal bad day, for everybody else, like whatever, dude, it's Tuesday, get over it. Right.
Mm.
But at the same time, it kind of it stunts our empathy a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
it's harder for us to connect to, like, "Oh, you stubbed your toe?" Like, I saw a guy get his back blown out, like, by a rocket round. So I think if you can start to compartmentalize that side of it and work on that empathy thing, then I think you're dialed in, right?
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
you get in a whole conversation about PTSD, which, on unpopular opinion Travis has, I don't believe it exists.
Interesting. Why don't you expand on that? I feel like that's interesting take.
So particularly when you look at the acronym itself, right?
Mhm.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. Like,
Mhm.
first of all, the word disorder I think is problematic in any case, right?
Mm.
Unless some genetic thing we can point to. But I don't think we're stressed because of what happened. I think we get stressed because it's not happening now.
Hmm.
So for me, when I first came home from my first deployment, dude, I was like a cat in a cage, man. I felt really off and just couldn't relax. And I thought I was like, oh, the trauma of deployment. No, man, it's because I was fucking bored,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like, normal life comparatively is kind of mundane.
Mm.
And when you're operating for 6, 12, 15 months at that like height, even if you're just kicking it on the fob and going to Burger King, like, you still could get blown up on your way there, right? So when you get taken out of that situation, I think we have a hard time dealing with the calm. And
Yeah.
so that leads us to filling that calm with sometimes questionable decisions, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot that I agree with about what you're saying. The I think there are definitely still trauma responses that are just echoes of trauma, and so like you have a. I had a panic attack in New York City, and after I got back, and just in a cab, and the guy was playing Middle Eastern music, and there was a lot of people, and I was like, holy fuck, I have to get out of here. I heart
Yeah.
racing, sweating, like I can't breathe. Like it was a really wild experience, and I think that's like it's certainly a symptom of a stressed out nervous system that has not recovered. But what you're saying is really interesting because I kind of use the word kind of trauma and conditioning interchangeably now. And I think just in my with my own experience of dealing with who I am, who I became after the military, who I'm becoming today, these identities that we assume are they're such a result of our conditioning from when we were very young, a very young age, and all these things that we've experienced for our entire lives. And then, in my opinion, the military really like doubles down on that egoic development of identity,
Oh,
um,
for sure.
which can be really problematic in a lot of times.
It can because, especially in the civilian sector, right? What we learn to look at as success in the military sometimes isn't quite the same thing over here, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you for me, I knew I had to stay in the top 10% of all NCOs in the entirety of the Army if I wanted to continue to progress in my career, right? And so what does that mean? Shoot better than everybody, run faster than everybody, do more push-ups than everybody, like, go to all the schools, all the stuff, right? And and a lot of that is not a direct transplant into the civilian sector. However, like, still important stuff, still good skills to have. Like, you and I both know from a fitness perspective, like, if I get up and smash and then get to work at 9 a.m. and everyone else got out of bed, like,
Mhm.
I'm ahead of the game, dude. Like, they're
Yes.
catching me all day. But I agree, like, and what you said about, conditioned responses, I think that is a lot of the issue. Because even in that taxi cab, I had a similar experience after my first deployment in Pike's Place Market in Seattle. That's
Mhm.
not good, right?
Mhm.
That's Market Street, right? Um, I think it's because our options that we're conditioned to utilize are now canalized, right? So, like, you couldn't smoke that dude in the cab if it went sideways,
Yeah.
right? Like, our 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 avenues of recourse have been snatched away from us, and we never learned the other side of it because it was just ingrained in us, like, oh, bad people are dead people, right?
Wow. I think that's a really powerful point that I haven't really considered like this before. And it's like, okay, your response to a difficult, let's call it a difficult situation or a problematic situation, is an external solution, finding an external solution. And when you are then in maybe a similar or what feels similar to your nervous system type of situation, then your response has to become internal. And we are not equipped with those internal tools, maybe.
Yeah, and it's just and it's stuff that we never developed in real time like everyone else because our response was supposed to be violence of action a lot of time. And no, I had a similar situation with a panic attack in my last corporate gig, and it screwed me up a little bit because I'm beating myself up like, "What are you doing, dude? This is easy. This is what you have to go do now comparatively is simple." But retrospectively, I'm like, "Oh, it's because I couldn't do any of the things I normally would have done." Right? Like, this person's a problem, you CMJ that ass. The crappy leadership, like, have a critical conversation with them, like, all the things that were at our disposal in the military are gone now, and so we have to figure out the new workarounds, and sometimes the frustrating thing is sometimes there is no workaround.
Yeah, that is so crazy because on one hand, you're absolutely right about the resiliency that you develop in the military, and I think it should not be overstate or it cannot be overstated because I see so many, especially young men these days, that have not been through any sort of, let's call it like initiation, ritual, some sort of elevation into manhood that since the beginning of humankind has existed for young men in particular. And so they spend their 20s and 30s kind of like wafting around and just kind of drifting without this purpose, which is an internal purpose of strength and development of self and certainly physicality in there. I think that's true too. And so yeah, you have a lot of kind of like lostness, but then on the other hand, that kind of resiliency doesn't always equate to being able to handle the situation properly, especially when you're not in that initiation anymore, which is something that I've kind of reconciled. I'm still reconciling is like the amount of brainwashing that goes into, and I guess brainwashing is
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
maybe not,
brainwash.
but it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild when you think about the steps taken to mold an individual in the military. And for right or wrong, right? I'm not even talking about the rightness or the wrongness. I'm just talking about on the individual level. That identity being stripped away as you go in, you're built up a new one, then you get out and you're stripped of it again. And yeah, it's a really interesting process for people.
That identity thing, I think, screws with people, particularly the folks who are in it more long term. Not that it fool with everybody, but I can tell you, I was lucky, and you know this about me. Like, I tried to stay as punk rock Travis as I possibly could
Yeah.
during my entire career, right?
Yeah.
Because I saw something very young, right? When I was a little baby private, it was my first duty station, and I got there as they were coming back from the field, and so they were having like a barbecue, right? So all the families were there. So Jess shows up, and I saw this. I will not say who it was, but I saw a sergeant first class and his children were nightmares.
Mm,
They were absolute nightmares. His wife was everything that you would classify as a dependapotipus, right?
mm,
That's our verbiage. And and he had the crazy high and tight, and his kids were just nightmares, but they were staying at parade rest for him. And I was like, what is that? And
yeah.
I told Jess, I'm like, I'm never going to become that thing. And so my transition, I think, was a little more streamlined coming out of it because I had stayed dialed into who I was outside of the uniform. But even with that, like, very diligent work over the entirety of my career, it was weird, man. It was weird transition to the civilian sector. And like, we walk in the room and our resumes on our chest,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
You and I know this handshake, right? The right hand out and the glance over, right?
Yeah.
Like, just real quick, can I trust you? You know?
I'll never forget, man. The first staff sergeant I ever met at 1-3, I had my first unit. He tab checks me and he goes, "Well, at least you're not some tabless monkey." I was like,
Right?
"Okay." And for people listening that don't know what that is, like if you don't have a ranger tab as an infantry officer, just turn around and walk away. Like you don't. Yeah.
100%. 100%. And so that's, we're used to that. So, like, if I walked into a room, especially later in my career, man, like senior non-commissioned officer, all the stuff, it's like I didn't have to say a word. I was in charge and everybody knew it. And so it's weird to like, oh, I'm just a guy in a polo now. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, to this day, dude, if Jess needs to get my attention, if we're someplace crowded and I'm just non-responsive, she'll yell Crutcher. And then oh, hello.
Yeah.
you know?
That's so funny. Do you find yourself now, like, with, I feel like you're kinda jumping around a little bit, but it's okay. Do you find yourself now falling into those same kind of habits of, maybe it's hypervigilance, maybe it's just judgment of looking at people, taking them in, drawing conclusions? Do you find yourself in those habits still?
It's not a habit, it's a default setting, man.
Default setting.
But what I've gotten better at is, changing my mind, right?
Mhm.
And so, I reference her a lot, but Jess is what I call, like, she is an eternal optimist, right? She meets a human being and it's assumes good intentions and all that stuff, right? Believes they have, like, everyone's best interests at heart. I meet someone, this, I meet someone like, "You're a douchebag until
Mhm.
you prove this," right?
Yeah,
But the space I give people to prove me otherwise has gotten much larger,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny coming from a place where, like, you spent 4 years at West Point. It's even worse. Like, it's even worse than it is in the regular army, but it's I mean, before I walk into any room, I'm double checking, make sure I don't have threads hanging off my uniform.
Yeah, man.
Everything is straight within within millimeters. So, like, it's everything on my uniform, my stuff is pressed, everything is perfect. And, you spend 9 years in my case, 20 for you, uh, doing that. It's an interesting thing to start comprehending intellectually instead of just defaulting to it.
Let
Uh,
me ask you this though, with that, right? Because you still care, right? That you're never gonna be able to turn that off. And what put together looks like for us might change because we don't have to wear the uniform anymore, right? But I was old school BDU guy, man, where we still polished our boots and everything.
yeah.
And so I totally understand where you're coming from. Do you feel like though that intuition serves you well? And what I mean by that is, like, do you feel like when you exercise that and you maybe do a quick evaluation of someone upon meeting them and you jive it up against that, like, what it would take to be disciplined, put together, actually show up, do you find that it's a pretty accurate litmus test?
Sometimes I do like the idea of being a double loop learner, as you're saying, though, and being open to changing your mind. I try to stay really open, and when I do find myself judging, which that comes from childhood, comes I've been judging people since the day I could, but and so I'm very aware that that's a default setting for me as well, and I try to push against it because I don't think it serves me very often. That being said, like, obviously everyone judges, and they look around and they see what's best for them and see if this is the person I want to interact with. We're constantly judging. But the type of judgment that I am talking about is like writing stories in my head about people. And so
Yeah,
that,
for sure.
that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, though, is I think that the lens through which I approach taking care of myself, let's say, and presenting myself, I guess, is different, because it used to be a lens of external validation, approval, what other people think of me, what I look like to them, their perspective. I don't give a shit about that anymore. I just care about me. I care about how I feel and how I carry myself into a room. And now I've done it so much, that it's like it's kind of second nature. I've recognized that when I carry myself as myself and I don't worry about what other people think, people are interested in that, because I think it's actually, unfortunately, it's unique. I think a lot of people, military service or not, are very concerned about what other people think about them. And
Oh,
in
dude.
and in reality, I don't think that's as important.
It's not only is it not important, right? It's unnecessary. And
Mm,
I mean, truly, this is not exaggeration. I would say conservatively, 90% of the clients that I work with, when we're like peeling back the onion, like I always say, like, let's hop in our DeLorean and go back in time, figure out where this nonsense started, right?
yeah.
If it's got to do with self-limiting beliefs, lack of confidence, you just can't execute in life effectively, it's almost always tied to, at least at some level, worrying about what other people think of them.
Mhm.
And I'm always like, dude, first of all, right? They're not thinking about you. People
Mhm.
hate to hear that, but it's so true, right? Like, Tina doesn't care if you got on red bottoms today. She didn't even look at the bottom of your feet, dog. Relax, right?
Yep.
Because think about it, man. Like, if we're walking around with this baked into our nugget and it's screaming all the time, what are they thinking? What are they? What if we're doing that? Everyone else is doing that too, right? You think they got time to worry about what you're doing? Hell no.
Yeah.
And I did a keynote last year and I actually did some research because I knew the room was like this. Like it was like 500 folks and I knew they all kind of struggle with this. And so I won't give you all the numbers. I gave them the inches because it makes keynote these 30 seconds longer, right? But but I
Yeah.
gave them all time breakdowns. But what it equates to in a calendar year, this blew my freaking mind, dude. In a calendar year, the average professional spends 11 days total time worried about what other people think of them.
Hmm.
That does not compute for me because forgive my language, but I don't give a shit what you think about me at all, dude.
Yeah, how does that serve you, you know? How does that
Not
serve
at all.
I think about, like, going back. Sometimes I don't regret really, there are certain things that I look at and I carry guilt or I carry some amount of sure, like, regret, but I recognize that those actions or failures or mistakes of character or whatever I've done, right? They've led me to here, and I really like here, and so I needed to learn those lessons the hard way sometimes, but I go back and I'm like, "Man, I wonder, if only I knew then what I know now," type of thing. And it's like, I wish I would have spent, especially in the military. And I actually think it's funny because I was not an officer's officer. I was a soldier's officer. And
Yeah,
I think you'd probably agree with that. But
really
it's,
good at it.
and so I think I even actually had that desire to impress a lot less than some of my fellow officers. But I still wish that I would have even gave less of a fuck back then, you know?
But you know what? I have to pick on that a little bit, and I've almost brought it up several times.
Mm,
Over the course of my career, I saw this weird cycle that happens with West Pointers, and
mm,
it's like you guys come in waves, right? We'll get a batch, and like, oh hell yeah, they're like you, right? I'll never forget one of close to this day. He was a platoon leader in my first unit, and I was the only dude in the building during lunch, right? And he comes to my office. I'm an E5 at the time, and he like knocks on the door and goes to parade rest. He's like, "Hey, Sergeant, anything I can be doing today?" And I looked at him up and down. He's a brand new West Point officer. I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna be just fine, dude. You're gonna be great." Right? And then you have this other, the next rounder, like what you're talking about, the officers or whatever. I think it's a strange thing that West Point has these weird cyclic moves where it's like batch of good dudes, batch of douchebags. But I think it's a disservice in some regards because I get it, right? Like as a platoon sergeant and a platoon leader, our focal areas are slightly different, but our outcomes are the exact same.
mm,
And and so, like, yeah, you guys are the logistics dude, the PowerPoint gurus, Excel spreadsheet masters, all the things, right? And so, like, it's the planning side of it, and the NCO side is a little more the execution and training side of it. But the truth of the matter is, like, our end result is competent, capable soldiers
mhm,
who are taken care of.
mhm,
And and when you say you're a soldier's officer, I think that's like, for me anyway, that's saying you're a good officer.
mm,
Like that. Yeah, I never strove to impress that next level NCO. I don't give a shit, man. Like, you're not the one out here executing the mission with me. And it's like in the NCO creed, it says, you're a direct reflection, or we say it all the time in the military, your soldiers are a direct reflection of your leadership. And I think you embodied that, man, because those kids under your command felt safe, they felt seen, and they knew that you would actually do what it took to take care of them. Fail fail or win at a mission, man, that's a win in life, in my opinion.
yeah, that's really cool, man. I really appreciate you saying that. It's honestly, it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my life. So, yeah, it does feel good, and I think it's funny because I don't know if it's cyclical, year, class, whatever. I just think that because West Point provides, 1,000 officers a year to the Army, you just kind of see all the sides of it, maybe. But it's funny because in my direct experience, it was the two specialty platoons. We had a scout platoon and the mortar platoon, and so you had an officer's officer in John Dibble, and you had a soldier's officer in me, and I took mortars, he took scouts. And so it was so funny because I remember the perfect is that we had Mungadai, right? And so that
Yeah.
Mungadai was the biggest pile of bullshit I had maybe experienced at that time. And so they announced that we were getting only the officers, they were getting their weekend taken away for this Mungadai experience, which they were just going to smoke us in the field for 3 days. And nobody knew why. And it was some team building thing. And it was every officer in the battalion. And I was like, cool. Well, I'm going to WWE Raw on Friday night regardless. And so me and Matt Sadi, we drive up to Seattle, get ham bone drunk. And then I slept for probably half an hour in the office the night before Mungadai, show up to the motor pool, still pretty drunk, missing half the shit on my packing list, you know? And little do I know, it's literally a tryout for the scout platoon between John Bibble and I. And so obviously I don't do very well in that because I just didn't care. And
Right,
I, you know, and so,
right.
and it's, you know, we got to a point where, you know, it was like on day 2 and it was my turn to take a graded patrol or whatever. And I'm, you know, so I haven't slept at all. And I haven't slept even longer because I was out getting drunk the night before at
Sure, yeah.
WWE naturally. And I just remember everybody is just wiped. We've had like 8 heat casualties already, and somehow I'm not one of them. I'm like, you guys are ridiculous. But the I so I just remember taking a long halt and just letting everybody rest and just not telling anyone what I was doing. And I was just like, we're just gonna sit here for a while.
Yeah.
And eventually the battalion commander caught on to what was happening, and he's like, kind of he freaks out and comes. I'm like, okay, we'll go. So but it's funny, right? Because in garrison, I was always number 2. I was always the number 2 officer behind John Dibble. And then I get to Afghanistan, and when it actually matters, and when leadership actually comes through, and I was number 1, and it's like, you know, and I had the whole scout platoon wants to come over to mortars, which is unheard of in any sort of freaking infantry battalion. It's crazy.
Especially those 2 platoons, it's usually the other way around, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was a really interesting kind of case study for me for sure.
You said not that I was hyper fixated on this during your story, but it is something that now is, like, in the forefront of my brain. WWE Raw Friday night in Seattle.
Yeah, yeah. It was right after I think it was WWE Raw because it was right after Randy Savage died, and so everyone had Slim Jims and dressed up as Randy Macho Man Savage. It was a blast. It was so cool.
Dude, who you're gonna think this is a strange question. Who wrestled that night?
I couldn't even tell you. I was not like I just thought it was going to be a fun event, and Matt had extra ticket, and so I was like, let's go. And they were great tickets too.
I think I was there, is why I'm asking.
Hell yeah.
Levi was into that stuff at the time, and I remember we did a Seattle trip for a WWE run. I don't remember any other that we may have been at the same wrestling event at the same
That's
time.
so fun, man. I mean, yeah, just crazy stuff in the army. But yeah, it's really interesting to see the different like because you're right. At the end of the day, it's about all you're trying to do is accomplish the mission with your men. And so I look back at, you know, what was our mission in Afghanistan, and that brings me quite a bit of confusion, quite a bit of some shame around it. You know, what are we doing? We're just making money for Halliburton. That's not why I joined up. That's not why I joined the military. But then I look at the boys and I look at our guys and what we did together while we were there on the ground, opening up a vet clinic, opening up a school, trying to secure that area. Because guess what? Like we did meet lots of good people over there, and we tried to protect them. And yeah, so I mean that in that present moment, I'm very proud of what we accomplished, but it's a very, very confusing thing for I think anyone that was, you know, a veteran of the global war on terror.
You know what I'll tell you though, man, and I feel you, like, and I struggle with some of that same stuff, but in between deployments, like, what's being espoused as the reason we're there versus what the execution model really looks like, what we're doing daily. And I remember I had a conversation during my second deployment in Iraq with a bad guy, and I was like, "Hey, man, why do you keep shooting at us? You know we're gonna win." Like, it was a candid conversation with this guy, and his response kind of floored me, though. He was like, "'Cause you're still here." I was
Yeah.
like, "Damn, I would probably shoot at me too." Right? And so it's one of those moments, but what we're talking about, I think it's, you know, for us, it's in the micro of deployment, right? And a lot of times what we're told and what we're doing don't really jive, and so we have to, like, look for not the bright side, but what are we really doing that's lasting? But that's the same in everyday life, man. Every corporate sector on planet Earth, you know, there's an organization I'm working with right now where upper leadership has not galvanized them with this, like, here's what we're doing, here's our driver, here's what we're doing, right? And so because of that, you know, secondary, tertiary, and on down the line, there's fragmentation, right? We don't know what we do. You know, we had this broader element of close with and destroy the enemies. Okay, got it. And
Mhm.
so we could, if we came in on a Tuesday like Ricky Bobby didn't know what to do with our hands, we'd be like, hey, what can we do today that would make us better at closing with and destroying the enemy, right?
Yep.
But oftentimes you've got to define what that next step looks like. And because there isn't going to be, if there is clear guidance, it's sometimes completely flies in the face of what we're doing. And so that's the thing to me, like when you can't fixate on what the mission set was,
Mhm.
especially in that into a deployment, man. You can't fixate on that.
Yeah.
Fixate on what the result was, right? And I know that I know because I stole them. I stole them quick, didn't I? Because
Yeah.
our unit was going away, and I'm like, I'm taking you bitches to 423 with me. I stole
Mhm.
as many soldiers back as I could
Yep.
because they were killers, man. And I don't mean that in the literal sense, but they were absolute savages and they were the best of the best. And they came and reproved it with me. So that's an incredible result, man, because that's something that's gonna pay dividends for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I totally think so, right? Like, and that's you just affect what you can affect, and yeah, I think you're right about you know about not fixating, but I want to hesitate because I don't believe that compartmentalizing is necessarily the right thing to do. I like to open myself to up to all of the truth in everything that happened, and yeah, there's a lot of messy truth in there for me,
Oh,
and
for sure.
yeah. But it's interesting, you bring up that kinda like corollary with the corporate world, and it's like, okay, what is the mission of, XY corporation? And it's like, what are paying shareholders? Like, oh, why do I give a shit about that? And then it's like, okay, so what is that trickles down. In the military, it's very easy to get motivated because you're in a
Sure.
situation where it's like you're with all the guys. It's very physical. It's violent. The stakes are incredibly high. They're the highest they can be. And then so it's very easy to get motivated every day on the ground level. But in corporate America,
Mhm.
what's the motivation? But a paycheck, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And that's when you have to, like, that unfortunately, a lot of that what's the motivation has to be an internal driver, right?
Hmm.
And you and I think we're lucky because I think everyone's imbued with superpowers, right? I think that we're lucky enough to realize some of ours. And
Hmm.
so in those situations, I say this quite a bit, but like our superpowers aren't for us. They're for everybody else to make everyone else better and their lives easier, right? Um, and so because of that, like when I don't have that direction, when I feel disenfranchised with the why that's being espoused, I'm like, okay, let's flex some superpowers, man. Like, and one of yours, and I think I would like to say I share that, like, pretty solid leaders, man. We know how to lead people and like dial up, do the root cause analysis on why we're not doing the best we possibly could, give them the tools to empower them to be better in those situations, and then be that mentor they need to keep them on track. And so that's our default setting, right? So when we are disenfranchised, we can go, okay, let's lead up here. Let's figure out where we can improve. And even if fuck it, dude, I don't care if we're on deployment and this mission sucks, and who wants to get better at karaoke? Let's get a karaoke machine here, right? I don't care, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And I think that's where some of the disconnect comes from, and where that like long term sense of disenfranchisement kind of starts to breed within any team or organization is people aren't tapped into what those like innate superpowers they've got are and how to flex those in those other environments.
That's such a cool point. In your so I think it's perfect kind of segue. Like in your because you did a stint in corporate America after the military. And so in your experience, did you come across any good leadership or was it all trash?
Oh, I mean, it would be really easy for me. It was all trash. No,
Mhm.
here's what I saw a lot in corporate America. We saw this in microdoses, man, in microdoses in the military, because there is a pretty aggressive vetting system, right? And I tell people this all the time. Like when you get promoted, it says because of demonstrated leadership potential. You already had to prove you can do this before we promote you to it, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of that is not really the way it works. A lot of the corporate world is a little bit more of who you know, how long you've been here, kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Your tenure outweighs your skill set sometimes. And so while there were some good folks, the problem that I saw was that their ability to execute effectively and impact change was canalized drastically
Mhm.
by toxic leadership above and below. And so
Mhm.
it wouldn't matter at this level if they're crushing, if they're making impact, if they're kind of steering that Titanic away from the iceberg, it would never grow legs and run because below them and above them was in this like the one saying that will make me want to punch you in the face immediately is if I ask you why we're doing something, you say it's the way we've always done it. I want to do physical violence.
Mhm.
So you first
Yeah.
keep doing some broken shit.
Yeah.
But that's what I saw, man. And so despite, their best intentions, best efforts, a lot of times they were just kind of stuck where they were.
Mm. Do you see that changing at any time?
I think, I think COVID has maybe in some ways too drastically changed the landscape of what the workplace looks like right now.
Okay.
I think we're in a weird spot, to be honest with you. From what
Yeah.
I'm seeing, the the organizations I work with is we've kind of got the old regime over here who are, you come to work, you shut up, you do your job, no one cares that you're here, you get thanked, when you get paid.
Mhm.
And that we kind of relate to from our background in the military. Like, no one cares if you like it. Yeah, it sucks. Of course it sucks, right? It's mud, whatever.
Yeah.
The post-COVID hires
Yeah.
who there was a lot of change, right? It wasn't just that we stayed inside for a little bit. It was also like there was a lot of social dynamics that changed and morphed and what's accepted and what's not accepted and what's important, what's not important. And so they all came in and drank every drop of that Kool-Aid. And
Mm.
so and then there's this weird like micro generation of leader in between them. It's trying to get the odd couple to actually be friends and it's tough. It's tough. So I think I think we're at the precipice of change. Now whether that's going to be a long-term good change or long-term bad change for corporate America is yet to be determined, right? What we're going to need to do is both teams are going to have to give up some of their toys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so much of it in my eyes revolves around money and like and just the centralized nature of money right now. And I won't get into the philosophy of decentralization and centralization, but it's like, so much of it has to do with the money now over the course of, let's say, 70 years or so being kind of funneled to the top. And so you're right. At the top of those organizations, you have like such a complex blend of things happening where it's people like, who do you know? How long have you been here? Are you part of the club? Do you do what I tell you to? Do you do it the old way, even if the old way is broken? Because the old
Right.
way funnels money up here, and so if you want that, then yeah, you can be here and just do what I tell you to. But now the people that are asking the questions are kind of this younger crowd, most likely. I don't think it's the older crowd who is benefiting from the maintenance of assets that they've had for 20, 30 years, whatever. But eventually that wealth transfer is going to happen somehow. And that is going to be really interesting because I find our generation is a really it's a really interesting one because it's right in the middle of all of this drastic change that happened
It is.
between and we did fight, we did go to war, right? Like some of us went to war, and that's something that this Gen Z population or this younger generation has not done. We also grew up without cell phones, which is not something that anyone else will ever do, which is a really wild thing, I think. And I think it's such a benefit to us, not having grown up with those. And then the other part is like we got to see when times were really good in the 90s.
Sure.
And it's like,
Oh, yeah.
everything
Yeah.
was good. And so now we compare that to right now and what's happening. And it's very hard not to be a little bit jaded, honestly.
Well, you're dead on, dude, and we're in this weird micro generation. I think they
Mhm.
call us the Oregon Trail generation, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere between X and Z, and it's like, I have a distinct moment in time. I think all of human society, we peaked. There was a direct moment in time we peaked, and Fred Durst and Christina Aguilera were on the same stage at the same time. That was it. The next
Those
stage,
moments. Yeah.
right? But but you're right, and what's interesting, man, like, when we talk about the centralization of money and everything else, it's like what I see in companies now is, and you'll hear this and you'll go, "Yep, totally get it," is that there's an emphasis on culture,
Mm,
right? Like, so that's kind of the big split, right? We have the standards generation and the culture generation. And and they think, that those are two different things, but the truth of the matter is you and I know this firsthand, right? They've got it backwards. I think the corporate model has things backwards right now. And what I mean by that is they go, let's define what we want the culture here to be like and let that inform how we do business,
mm,
right? And and we come from the army, right? So it's standards and outcomes and those inform our culture,
yeah.
not the other way around. And
Oh,
so I'm not saying both aren't wildly important,
yeah.
but you knew if you want this culture that we had in the military, it only came on the heels of these standards and these outcomes.
Do you think that the corporate version of that comes from a misunderstanding of how to develop culture?
1,000,000%. A million. This is a recent one, but in the last couple of months, I was doing a sensing session with a corporate leadership team, and they were going back over their annual questionnaires. They send out this
Yeah.
to all their folks, and whoever made it for them, and it runs the numbers for them. And they're trying to like deduce what certain things mean. And I go, well, I've talked to these humans like one on one. This is what they mean.
Mhm.
Really? So, like, there's a disconnect between what people are saying and what the leadership teams are receiving.
Yeah.
And so, if you were to, like, just blanketly say, "What are they after?" Right? Everyone thinks that more robust HR departments, you
Mhm.
can't say anything anymore, right? Like, that's what they think the culture want that they people want, but the truth of the matter is, like, when you talk to individuals, they want results. They want a clear path to they want what we had, a clear trajectory. If you check these blocks, man, you get this education, you do this well here, you're going to move forward. But right now, you've got this whole generation of workforce who doesn't have a clue what's required to progress because they were sold a bill of goods. Get that degree and you'll be good. And like, oh, not so much, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's, that's one aspect of it. And it's like, I when you're saying this culture thing, I think of Quicken Loans, and I think, um, I have a couple of buddies that are pretty high up in the Quicken Loans, executive situation, and and watching their development over time. Right, they're filthy rich. They have so much money, right, and they are the most stressed out people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And yet their office environment is, well, yeah, man, we got ping pong tables and we got this free things and we got massages on Thursday and we got all this stuff, and it's like highly sellable to a 21-year-old who doesn't know better, and who is like willing to drive and do that. There's like Wolf of friggin' Wall Street in there, man. It's crazy.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, the actual culture is not like, that's so superficial. Culture is deep. And when you have a deep culture, I mean, it eats processes and systems for breakfast, in my opinion. People will go to the end of the earth for a good leader. And it's, that is truly what is missing. And it's so much of that, I think, is because they are not leading by example. Like the corporate bigwigs and the fat cats, they're not on the ground floor talking to people. They're up in their offices doing whatever reports or talking to whoever they think they need to talk to.
And you're right, brother. Like, there's such a massive disconnect from the upper levels of leadership and the doer level of execution at this point. They have, they're talking about do this new system, work this new process, but they don't know what's breaking on the doer side. They have no visibility on what, like, you and I, we were in an environment where a lot of times our work called us back to the company, right? We'd have to go to the office. I can, after you moved on, I had Thomas, right? Who was fabulous human being, right? And a lot of times, like, Thomas and I had stuff to do in the office, but we would tag out. Like, if the kids were out training, even they were just right outside running gunners drills, like, we would tag out and go put eyes on and see what are we actually doing, right? And now it's like, everyone wants to lead like they're flying a drone. Like, let's just fly something over 30,000 feet. We'll take a peek. You can't see what the hell's going on down there like that.
Yeah, and it's because it's hard, it's hard, and until yeah, yeah, it's a lot of effort. But so when you kind of went through two major transitions, at least, right? Like I guess, like getting out, separating from the military. First of all, after 20 years, that's a massive transition. I would love to hear how that transition went into corporate gig, how your corporate experience went into the transition into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, Cliff Notes version of that. The transition I thought it was pretty smooth, right?
Cool.
I thought I transitioned real smoothly from military to corporate, and I think a lot of it had to do with, I didn't have all those weird identity things that happened with a lot of folks. In fact, I remember I was, I had a job before I was on terminal leave, so
Mhm.
so I was good to go. My first sergeant and I, he worked the deal with me. He's like, dude, just find a job. I'm like, cool, awesome, right? I was on the trade side of things, so a little easier there, right?
How did you go
But
about finding that job? Did you have like a group that you could plug into that were headhunting, that kind of thing?
So my road was a little different because, at the time, because I had spent a lot of time being stationed in Benning, I had done 2 trips down there. So, for folks who aren't aware, Fort Benning is like the hub for infantry training. Every infantry school on the planet is there, and I had been to a lot of those schools. And so on my way out the door, I've got folks like throwing GS jobs at me left and right. "Hey, come over to this schoolhouse. Come over to do this thing." And I'm like, I think I'm just done, dude. Like, I just, you know, I didn't want to army at all at that point. And so I just aggressively, wrote a pretty killer resume and then just aggressively sought something at the equivocal level. Like, my search was really financial at that point. Like, leadership is financially equivocal to what I'm walking away from. And that was it. Um, and then, we had some family stuff and a few changes, and I'll be candid with you, it was the school district, right? Because you're in Columbus, Georgia, we were on the Alabama side, but the school districts there are not super great, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And, I'm like, "I got 3 daughters about to be in this thing, like, we're gonna be less here than we are right now," and it dawned on me for the first time in my adult life, I get to choose where I live, which was crazy,
Yeah, cool.
and so we wound up choosing the one place I said I'd never come back to, where I grew up in Kansas City, naturally, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so that market opened me up to a new leadership opportunity, which was great. I was killing it, dude, killing it. I got promoted super fast, like 3 times in 2 years, just crushing. And
Mhm.
so on paper, you're like, "Man, this guy's got it all." Like more making more money he's ever made in his life, getting promoted left and right, you know? It was great. It's perfect.
Mm.
It sucked. Soul crushing. Hated it.
Yep.
Hated every bit of it, man. And Jess, bless her heart, she was like, "You should try and do something on your own." I'm like, "I don't know, man. That's kinda crazy," right? I had never even heard of coaching. And so she brought it up to me. I'm like, That's not real, right? That's you just made that shit up." But anyway, so I looked into it a little bit and, I'm one of the, like, 7 people on planet Earth who can say COVID was awesome
Mm.
because I was exposed, right? You remember early COVID, if you were in the same zip code with somebody with COVID, they put you on leave. They sent me home like, "Oh, someone you were near was
Mm.
diagnosed, you gotta go home for 10 days." Even with a clean COVID test, still had to go home for 10 days. Day 6 Day 6, I, sent a text to my regional manager, and I was like, "We gotta talk," and he's like, "You're not coming back, are you?" I was like, "No." He's like, "I knew it."
Yeah.
And he said to me when he did my interview, he goes, this is after the text, he's like, "Dude, when I interviewed you, I looked to the rest of the panel and said, either he'll be with this organization for forever or he'll quit inside of 2 years." I'm like, "Well, damn it, Brian, I wish you told me that 2 years ago when I was." And I did a little bit of online training, joined a mastermind for a while for coaching and speaking, and then subsequently after a couple years or after my first year in the mastermind, the facilitator was like, "Will you do this with me?" So I actually co-facilitated the mastermind for a couple of years. And that's that, man. You know, I did just one-on-one coaching for about a year and a half, and I was like, "I wanna go run my mouth around the country for a little bit." So
Mm.
that's when I just relaunched the speaking side of things. As I've just illustrated for the last 7 minutes, I got no problem running my mouth.
Yeah.
So that's it, man, and what was craziest, like, the one story I'll share about the transition from the corporate gig to doing what I'm doing now, not that it's gotta be coaching or speaking, but, like, doing because, I'm a firm believer we're all here to do something. Like we have a purpose, right? And I can get into my religious beliefs some other time, but when I left that and I started the business, we ended up in Disney World. It's like our yearly trip to Mecca, right? And I'm walking with my oldest at the time, I think he was 13. And he goes, "Man, Dad, this is great." I was like, "Yeah, no joke, kid. We're we're at Disney World, this killer resort. There's a giant statue of Baloo the bear over there. It's pretty great."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "You seem better." And I was
Mm.
like, "Oh." And for a second, like, aggro dad wanted to come out and be like, "What do you mean better? I'm
Mm.
amazing. I've always been fabulous,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I was like as I leaned into it a little bit, I'm, "What do you mean by that, guy?" And he's like, "Just seem lighter." I'm like, "Damn." And I it had just started, dude. So what I know that I know that I know is if you if you can discover what you're passionate about, right? A lot of times that will reveal your purpose.
Mhm.
Ultimately, you can profit from that. Maybe it's not financially, maybe it's just spiritually, maybe it's just relationships, right? But man, people are running themselves ragged chasing somebody else's damn dreams, and it
Mm.
hurts my feelings.
Dude, you are speaking to my soul right now, man. I there's so much in that. That is such a rich confession, and it's very cool. I feel like so many people are passionate about things, but they're stuck and they think, XYZ things have to line up in order to pursue them. And in reality, the clarity often comes from action itself or surrounding the things that you're passionate about. But you've mentioned a couple things now that I would love to, just kind of dive into because some people have. I had a really, really great guest on last week, Aruba Seam. She was really, just really, really brilliant lady, and she was talking about advantages that people have, that some people have, and so you've mentioned two, maybe at least one is significant advantage, and that is having a supportive wife and family. And so, like a lot of times, someone that you love and that loves you and that you trust is able to say something like, "You should do something on your own. You should go out," like, and for maybe that, like, kicks open a door that was maybe inching its way open anyways, but it throws it open a little bit more. It's like gives you a little bit of permission. And the other thing that you mentioned is, like, your faith or some relationship with the divine, and I think that that's also important. I love talking about this stuff. I think it's fascinating to hear what people think and how it affects their life.
Well, and, both of those things for me at least are inexplicably tied together, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I met Jess. I think I met her when I was 13 at church, and we started dating when when we were 15. I think she was still 14, right? So, I mean, we survived puberty together, dog. Like, we're ride or die, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so because of that, and like, you have a very similar situation. Like, you and your spouse are tight, dude. Like, and there's a lot of trust there. And so I can trust her to not hit me with platitudes, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, there's honesty, and that's one of the absolute most important things in any relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or professional relationship. And so, like, don't try and sell me something, man. Just tell me. Like, if we used to do this with the kids. Remember, like, once a month, I would have a sensing session with the platoon and be like, "Hey, what do I suck at?" Right?
Mhm.
Just tell me, what do I suck at?
Mhm.
So I can improve. And so when she was really like, "No, like, I see how hard you're working. I see how unfulfilled you are. Like, think about it." I was like, "Huh, okay." And when I looked at, like, kind of what it was, I'm like, "Oh, you mean coach, train, mentor? Like, the same shit I did my entire career," right? It was a That was the most direct translated of my skill set I'd ever seen on paper, right?
Mm.
But the faith thing is massive, man. And, what you were saying as far as, like, people will not run after something even though they're passionate about it, because the truth of the matter is it's scary, man. It's very
Mhm.
scary, right? And and I always default back to what I believe to be absolutely true, and that is I was not created with a fear nature.
Mhm.
It's not an innate part of us, right? If you've ever seen a toddler, dude, go after a cookie on the other side of the room, they don't care. You
Mhm.
could put pits of alligators, punji sticks, flamethrowers, they don't care. They
Mhm.
see objective and they go after it. They're not afraid of who's watching or what's happening around. They don't care.
Yeah.
That's how we're designed. We're designed to aggressively and proactively pursue our passions, right?
Mhm.
'Cause that reveals to us our purpose, why the hell we were planted here in the first place. And granted, like, you're gonna go through seasons in life where you have to walk that purpose out a little bit differently, right? So for example, like, I led as effectively as I possibly could have in the corporate sector, and I know because they tell me, I'm still in communication with so many of them today, that I made a difference in their life. Maybe like you've done with the guys that you've led, right? Like, maybe it wasn't better at work, but a better human being, hell yeah, that's a win for me, right?
Mhm.
And so while the nature of how you walk out your purpose may change, if you're dialed into what that is, right, and that is only revealed to you by, like, going after those things you're passionate about, you're gonna be fine. Is it scary? Hell yeah, it's scary. Of course it is.
I love this idea though that fear is a conditioned response. It's a learned thing. And it's fascinating, like, and it's everything. It goes. Everything is conditioned into this human, expression of a human that we all are. We had to learn our original language. My thoughts are learned. They're not mine even half the time. You know what I mean? It's a really fascinating thing. And so certainly thoughts about fear. I love that example of a toddler going after a cookie with flamethrowers on. It's brilliant. It really highlights that point very, very well. And it's 100% true. And when you start applying that to everything, it's like, whoa, 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 just like slow down. Like nothing that you actually, that you think has to be true. And nothing, like, and it's more about what you feel. And it's like, what do I feel is right? And I do think a lot of people are stuck and they don't know how to generate energy. And I think there is a massive correlation between the people who take care of this, temple that we have, the body, the people that take care of their body have an easier time translating energy into action. And obviously there's exceptions, and it's not whatever. I won't get into it, but it's a really, really important thing to do. That you like. It's not going to just come to you, right? Like you do have to allow things. I think like a certain amount of things to happen for you, but it's less about controlling and more about allowing. And within this kind of whatever dance we're doing, path you're walking, however you want to look at it, you do have to take the next step and then the next step and then the next step. And when you're aligned with who you are and what you want to do, those steps become so much easier most of the time. But the seasonal thing is also true.
But you're right, dude, and that you touched on it a couple times, and you just ended with it as well, like, knowing who you are. I think that if there was a true genuine epidemic on the planet, it's that in some regards for me, right? Because people people are trying to be a something. They're not being themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I saw this, I've seen it with all my kids to a certain degree, but my daughter, my oldest daughter, since she was little tiny, man, in fact, the last kids book I wrote is about her. And the little girl in the book is her. I've got pictures to prove it, where it didn't matter what Jess put her in that day. Cutest little outfits on the planet. By the time I would get home from work, it would be whatever outfit Jess put her in, plus purple tutu, every bracelet she could find,
Mhm.
pink galoshes, and purple swimming goggles just
Yeah.
popped up on a mad scientist, right? And I always just called her my gypsy princess, and that was her jam, man, and I let her rock with it. "You wanna go to the store like that? Let's roll, kid," right? Because that's her. That is how she was designed on purpose. And I remember when she started middle school, she came home and she was like, "Dad, can you get me whatever?" I think it was like a North Face jacket, right? I'm like, "I'm cool with it, but that doesn't jive." Like, I'm sorry, Janis Joplin never wore a North Face jacket,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I was like, I'll get you whatever you need, kiddo, but explain to me why."
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, this person, this person." I go, "Then I absolutely refuse."
Yeah.
Because what happens to his brother is like, we are born, we are designed the most perfected version of ourselves. And then the world starts to should all over you.
Mm.
You should do this. You shouldn't do that. You should say this. You shouldn't say that. You should look like this. You shouldn't look like that. Should talk to these people. Shouldn't talk to these people. Should. And before you know it, unless you've got someone in your life to check you and go, no, 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 that's not you. You
Mhm.
have morphed to this version of you that was never meant to exist. And it feels so clunky to walk around the planet in persona all the time.
Mhm. So how does someone come back to themselves?
I've got some stuff that I use for that, right? And I have one client in particular. She was really struggling with this, dude. And I was like, okay, get in our DeLorean. Like, when was the last time you remember just joy? Joy.
Mm.
Just like, and I have some things that, like, it can't involve anybody else, right? Like,
Mhm.
you can't have joy attached to other humans because they are gonna fuck that up, right? And so when was the last time just on your own, you just felt unadulterated joy? And
Mm.
she was like, and we went way back. She's like, "I don't know, maybe I was 9." I go, "Cool, what were you doing?"
Yeah.
She's like, "I was spinning in a circle in my backyard, and I laid on my back and watched the clouds spin." I was like, "When was the last time you did that?" She's like, "Maybe then." I go, and I paused the session. I'm like, "Go outside." She's
Yeah.
like, "What?" I'm like, "Go outside and do it."
Yeah.
And she did it. She was like, "Oh my god, I feel so much better." I'm like, "Whoever that is,
Yeah.
you need to go back and get her ass and bring her to today."
Mhm.
And so, like, reconnect with the stuff that just lights you up. It doesn't require anybody else. It does, stuff that you would do all by yourself for forever.
Yeah.
That's the stuff. That's when you start to un reveal to yourself, like, okay, what is it that I'm really into, right?
Mhm. And then direct action towards it. And it's like, there's the amazing kind of a hermetic philosophy of polarity. And it's, you've got the dark and the light on one side, or cold and hot, or whatever. And it's like, the way, if you want to get something from cold to hot, you don't remove the coldness, you add heat. You want to get something from dark to light, you don't remove the darkness, you add light. And so that's where people, I see it so much, is like they're stuck in this spot on that spectrum, and they can't, and they're not adding energy to get this way, because it's a little bit at a time. It's going outside once, and then it's feeling that, and it's reconnecting with it and being like, whoa, and we try to intellectualize everything. And instead it's like, just throw all that away for a second and just get into the chest a little bit.
And you brought it up a little bit as well, man. Like, the physicality
Mhm.
is, we could harp on it. You and I are self-proclaimed gym rats, right? We could harp on it all day, but the truth of the matter is, like, it reveals so much about who you are to
Mhm.
yourself. I've got a client I'm working with right now. Bless her heart, man. Like, it's the first time she's ever stepped foot in a gym.
Mhm.
And she's going now and she's like, "Did you know I could do this and this and this?" And I'm like, "Do you know that that says you're this, this, and this?" And it's generally like the complete opposite of how they see themselves. Like, they see themselves as a quitter or someone who starts things and never finishes or doesn't take action, and now they start to do this thing. "Oh, I went up, 20 pounds in my PR in the last month." But dude, that shows that you're consistent. That shows that you're disciplined. That shows that you can do the long game. And it reveals so much to us about who we really are, and that's why, it's not like the old NCO anymore, like, "Hey, fatty, you gotta pass your PT test." Now it's like, "Oh, damn it. Your life would kick so much more ass if you were just" you know what I mean?
If you felt good, imagine like feeling good and you can like, so many people don't know how good you can feel. It's so funny. My wife and I were talking about this last night. She's on the board of a nonprofit called Second Chance. It's a animal shelter and really, really cool organization. And so they're reopening this location. So we went last night to help take stuff out of shipping containers, right? There's 3 big shipping containers. There's like big wash tubs in there, sinks and kennels and washer dryers, like big stuff, right? And there's about 8 people there. And so I don't say this to like toot our horns or anything like that, but there's about 8 people there, and her and I did about 60% of the work.
Sure.
And I'm like, but and I had zero negative feelings towards the people that can't do the work that I can. It just made me feel good. I like doing work, like I like having an engine on me, man. And it's like
Yeah.
and I don't always get put in those positions where I get reminded of that engine, because in the gym it's just me and myself, and I'm just trying to beat myself, and I'm a very tough component or tough opponent in the gym. But it's like,
Yeah.
but in that situation, I'm like, man, this is so cool. Like, and I see my wife, right? Especially my wife. My wife is in phenomenal shape, and she's doing pull ups and all kinds of shit. She's ripped to shreds, and especially other women see that and they're like, oh my gosh, like it's so cool. And it is cool. It's amazing. And it's just like, you could do this and you could feel that way. You really could. And just to give people a little taste of what that is, it feels so good. It makes every moment better.
Yeah, man, and you know what I think? Like, everyone in our space talks about why, right? "What's your why? What's your why?" Like, I think what they miss is, like, that has to be some deep, deep-rooted stuff, right? Some stuff you can't take back has to be your why, right? And so, like, you had to have a why to get you even started on that journey, right? And into the fitness and anything, right? You've gotta have a deep-seated why. I know what mine is, but I've gotta know what was your first why to, like, start lifting, to start, not just like functional strength, like, but actually, like, I'm gonna take this serious. I'm gonna try and improve this meat wagon that carries me around the planet.
Yeah, well, I love sports growing up, right? Like I always loved the team aspect of it. I played football, basketball, ran track. I was good at it. It was a lot of fun. Started there, but didn't get serious. We were dating, and then it's at West Point, it was very competitive, a very competitive nature, and so I showed up to West Point, and when I was a freshman, I came in as an athlete, but there's a very big difference between being an athlete and being in really good military shape, and so
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I showed up and I was just getting trounced by everyone. I was like in terrible shape compared to other people. And so I wanted to be better. And so it was this really competitive nature in me that made me better. And by the time I was a senior, I was the physical development officer for my company. And so then, we get into the army, and certainly like a lot of that, like just wanting to be the best version of myself really, really drove me. But I didn't fall in love with it until I was in Afghanistan. And Tony Sheffy and I would hit the gym all the time together, and we would lift heavy, and we were doing all these that's where I really set the bones of my lifting
Mhm.
foundation. And it was with him, because him and we just bonded so much in there, and all the soldiers were like, whoa, like what's going on with those, and they were trying to emulate us, and so they were always in the gym, and I just saw this like trickle down effect of what we were doing in there, and how it was relating to the success that our platoon was having. And so really got set there. And then I just got obsessed with it. And I was looking at videos, and I was watching training videos, and I was writing programs, and I was doing all this stuff. And I was like, I'm going to go be a coach. I want to do that. I got
Yeah.
back, I went back, got my master's in exercise and wellness from ASU. And I will never forget, man, I was in like, it was a big classroom environment. It's probably like 70 students. And it was like a kinesiology class or something. And the professor's like, who here wants to be a PT? And like 2 people raise their hands. Who here wants to be whatever, a nurse practitioner? A couple people. Who wants to be a strength coach? The whole freaking class raises their hand, and I was like,
Of
oh,
course. Yeah.
I was like, this is a lot of competition. Like, this is going to be crazy. And I got nervous. By the end of that class, though, the end of the semester, I'm like, you guys don't want to be strength coaches. What are you even doing here? Like, you don't even know, you don't even hit the gym. Like, you don't even know how to squat. You can't even coach a squat right now. Like, what are you doing? And so it was very funny. I just really fell in love with it. And that has evolved so much. Now I've been doing it for so long, I couldn't live without it.
And but, that's the thing, like, you had a pretty inescapable why, which the cool thing about whys is, like, they never go away all the way, they get added to if you do them the right way, like, there's
Yeah.
compounding effects because life is like, "Oh, you should also do it because of this," right? And so now it's like, you've learned that you're optimizing how you walk around on the planet, right? Everything is easier, man. Everything is easier. Like, breathing's easier, everything's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, like, for people to understand what it feels like to actually feel good. Like, if I get stuff that used to, like, be not a problem, this is the downside to it, right?
Mm.
Stuff that used to be not a problem, like, if I get a cold, I'm like, "Oh, this stinks," right?
Mhm.
Now, if I get a cold, dude, I'm like, "This is the end of the world." This is the work because I feel so good the rest of the time, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Dude,
like,
I think it was Mark Manson. I think he brought up this really great point. He's like, the more good, healthy, good habits that you set for yourself, the more you need those habits.
"Yes, dude.
Very true.
Yes. Oh, trust it. Endorphins are far more addictive than alcohol, right? You
Mhm.
just gotta give them a chance. Let them get in there."
I mean, I tell yeah, like that's the big one for me. I stopped drinking over 2.5 years ago, and got totally just totally sober from alcohol. Still like psychedelics, but I take them very very intentionally. But anyways, the way that my daily life has changed from that is insane. And I was always, despite the boozing all the time, I was very healthy. I was in great shape. I could rock and roll with the best of them, but
Yep.
I feel so different now.
Dude, yeah,
And
and it's not a one-upsmanship, it's because I totally understand where you're coming from, like, I just hit 8 years sober this year, and that's we could do another, hour and a half on,
sure.
like, alcohol and and the military, right? But it was so weird, man, because, like, I was deep. I was, like, super deep, especially after I got out of the army, right? Because there's no more rules, you know? I didn't know that civilians didn't live like pirates, where they didn't just get up and start drinking and do that shit all day.
Yeah.
And so I was putting away, like, 30 a day, supplementing with, whiskey it was hardcore, right?
Mm,
And I'd done all the research because 'cause we're nerds and we research everything we're about to do, and I was like, "Oh, if I quit, I could die. Interesting."
mhm, mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So 3rd day of that journey, right? Jess says I look gray, like one of the gray aliens, right? And, because all the worst parts of the Bible are happening in my body at the exact same time.
Yeah.
It's miserable, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "You should really probably go to the doctor because I just did cold turkey by myself at the crib,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And I remember going, "No, I wanna feel every single second of this, so
mhm,
I never do it again." And when I started, like and I don't know how it was for you, but it wasn't like, "I'm gonna quit drinking for forever," right?
mhm, mhm.
But once I hit 30 days, I woke up and it was like a switch, dude.
Yeah,
I woke up, I'm like, "Holy shit, I feel good."
yeah.
I didn't know I hadn't felt good for a long time.
For a long time, yeah, because even when you're first I think a lot of people experiment with, like, a tapering process, and I was trying to make rules for myself where, "Okay, I'm only gonna drink 3 times a week, and when I do, I'm only gonna have 3 beers," and blah, 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 all this stuff. Even
Right.
if like, even with those, I still had that low to medium grade anxiety that comes with drinking,
Yeah.
and I wasn't aware that had just been my default setting for, 20 years, and so it was like, that's just the way it was for me, and I didn't know that any different. And so I didn't have the physical symptoms when I quit, but I had like a moment where I was like, I gotta like it had been building to this moment, right? To that straw that breaks the
Sure.
camel's back, and I just kind of had this epiphany, and my I'll just tell a story. My wife and I, we were out for my birthday, and we got into this big argument about whatever, and nobody's making any sense, and we're both upset. We're all emotional. I'm throwing a pity party about how it's my birthday and why can't we just blah blah blah. And I realized in that moment, even drunk, I was like, I have no tools to deal with this situation right now. I had
Yeah,
zero.
man.
And this sucks. And so the next morning we wake up, we're still kind of like, like kind of quiet with each other. We go to breakfast. I order a drink at breakfast because I am a pirate. And it comes to me. I take a sip out of it and I pushed it away and I was like, I'm gonna quit for a year. I said a year. I was like, I'm not touching it for a year and I'm gonna see what that does. And so the first month was interesting. And then it was like months 2 and 3 were the really weird ones for me personally because I was so bored. And I was like, how am
Okay.
I gonna have fun? Alcohol was everything. And that was how I had fun. And so what I started to realize slowly was that it wasn't about going to the football game or hanging out with friends. It was about drinking at the football game, drinking with friends.
Absolutely. Yep.
Drinking was the activity. And when I realized that I could have fun without it and I started to do that a little bit more, my whole baseline of enjoyment just went up. And now it's like, obviously there's exceptions. I don't always have a good day, but it's like I'm having fun like 90% of my life now. It's amazing. It does not require alcohol.
And what's more is that 10% where things were a little wonky,
Mm,
you don't wake up feeling like shit the next day. It's
yeah.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's such a wild thing. 8 years sober for you, mate. That's freaking awesome, man. Good for you. That's
Oh, yeah,
great.
dude. I know. I was not that guy. In fact, anyone who talked about AA, I didn't do AA. I did the Travis is a dumbass and did it himself thing, right? But, like,
Cheers.
never heard anyone say, "Yeah, 2 days. Fuck yeah, man. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Keep it up." Like,
Yep.
and I never thought I'd go into it, like, have an issue with booze, right? Because it was I had such an intimate relationship with it before.
Mm.
And now it's like, if I see someone this is maybe a judgment thing. I've heard people say, "Oh, just a little bit of social lubrication." I'm like, "Wow, you're fucking weak if
Yeah.
you need to
Interesting.
talk to other people."
Yeah. Yeah, you're just conditioned. You're conditioned to think that, and the one that gets me is when people are like, "Oh, it's a function I had to drink at," and I'm like, "No, you don't. No, you
Yeah, you
don't.
know,
Actually. Like, watch, I'll show you. It actually is pretty. That's been a whole 'nother thing to deal with is like being places because it doesn't bother me to be around
no.
drunk people, but it's very interesting to like watch the degradation of the night happen.
There were a couple relationships, I'm not gonna lie, where I hung out with somebody who I was really close with,
Mhm.
sober the first time, like, "Oh, you're kind of intolerable."
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we can hang out.
Yeah, and now the way that I kind of deal with that, like, that voice in my head is I go, "That used to be me." And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I thought I was so funny and so cool and so obnoxiously fun but it's like, "Oh, that used to be me." And it's
Yeah,
very
we weren't any of those things.
yeah. So like now, man, so like you work with do you stick just to corporate or are you kind of all over the place? How does your business function?
My niche is the worst niche on the planet,
Hmm.
because it's the planet, right? And
Yeah.
early on, like, this, man, when you start entering into this space, everyone's like, "You gotta narrow it down. You gotta get laser
Mhm.
focused on who your ideal client is." Like, okay, yeah. And so, but it was interesting because when I first started creating content for the business, it was bad. It was really, really bad, right?
Mhm.
I remember it was like shirt and tie. Like, I looked like I just left work and started recording a YouTube video. It was abysmal, dude. Like, the strategies were good. Everything I was saying, I had the receipts for. It makes sense. It works, right? But the delivery sucked. And so I remember one night when the first podcast that Jess and I did together, life happened. And so we didn't record when we wanted to record. We had to do it hours and hours later. And so I'm run down a little bit depleted. My filter is gone. And we just jump into this topic and I let it rip, dude. And I had folks that have known me for, 2 decades text me the next morning, like, "It's about time you showed up to your own show." Right.
Mhm.
So all that to say that I quit trying to be the thing and I just started creating stuff that I thought would help people. Right.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden, who my ideal client was, they weren't checking in with me, but it was now entrepreneurs and creatives and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, if that's where the market is and that's where the need is, I'll work with these folks. And then over time, it's like then corporate comes back. And so the reality is, man, like, I think every one of us, right? It's not just me. I think every human is. I said it a couple times, like, we're imbued with these powers that are there to serve others.
Mhm.
And so my niche is planet Earth, right? If there's something that I can help you with, and this isn't like a pitch, but I don't turn anybody away. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I've got stay at home parents. Hell yeah, man. Like,
Mhm.
I used to tell Jess all the time. She's like, "Oh, were deployed. She's like, I can't complain because your day's really hard. I'm like, I get to shoot the insurgents. You've got to feed them breakfast, dude. It's a totally different ballgame. Like,
Yeah.
I like easy compared to yours.
Yeah. It's so interesting, right? Because yeah, you're right. There's so much talk about specialization, niching down, and I've always kind of said, yeah, like my specialization is being a generalist, and
Yeah.
it is, and I wonder if it probably is something that infantry guys kind of share, and it's I mean I'll go to my grave saying that the most talented person on earth is the American infantryman. I really will.
But man, I think you're onto something there because I think it's true for everyone. I just think it's been proven to us, right? We get thrust into environments with people from every different socioeconomic background all over the country, different countries, at different genders, ideologies, all these things, and we figure out how to make it work, right? We
Hmm.
figure out how to improve each other. And so I think all that superficial stuff that would give you the compulsion to niche down to where you're comfortable is lost on us. I don't think we don't worry about being comfortable. We worry about impact. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Gosh, man, it's such an interesting ride, man. But well, so before we kind of wrap this up, is there anything that we did? I feel like we covered so much ground. It's been a really, really enlightening and cool conversation catching up with you.
Dude, this has been awesome. And I'm so glad we took the approach we did, and just hit record 5 times to
Yeah,
just
we'll see how it will. Hopefully, it got recorded. We'll figure that out too.
I know some people have seen it live, but that's the way to do it, man. Instead of the candid conversations are, I think, the most valuable. People going into a conversation with an agenda is gross.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, though, we do the questionnaire beforehand, and I did see at the end of yours, at the end of your answers, you asked what 3 movies you would
Oh,
watch
heck yeah.
if you could only watch 3. And I was thinking about that because I just read it right before we got on, and I was thinking about my answers. 2 of them were very obvious. Third one, I don't know, but what I'm more interested in yours.
Okay, so for context, the the question that I'm asking is if you could only watch 3 movies for the rest of your life, no
Mhm.
other movies. And generally, I let people pick, right? This is a personality profile thing that I completely made up, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
But I
love
let them pick movies, books, or, music, right?
it.
And so I just went with movies. Um, so do you know your 3?
The immediate as soon as I read that question, I was like, Braveheart. Braveheart's on that list.
100%. Yep.
1,000%. And which isn't even my favorite movie, but I watch it once a year, and always cut it off now. I stopped watching it after Robert the Bruce betrays him. I'm like, I don't need to see the rest. But you've seen it enough. But I think it's one of the most it's a masterful movie. Um, True Romance is on there. That's my
Mm,
favorite movie. Which actually, just to bring it full circle, came from Hot Cash told me about that movie. I'd never seen it. There you go.
perfect.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Wrigley. And then I was thinking about my third one, and I was like, because replayability is so important, right? And I think I had to get some sort of sci-fi horror in there. That's kind of my jam. And so,
Mm.
The Thing is number 3 on my list. So
Ooh, good one.
Braveheart, True Romance, and The Thing. Those are my 3.
Okay, Braveheart, True and Romance, and The Thing. Okay. So, I'll give you mine, but I'll tell you your results after I give you
Yeah,
mine,
I'd
okay?
love to. Yeah, I'd love to know.
Again, totally made up by me.
Mhm.
Uh, so mine also Braveheart,
Yeah.
always makes the list. Black Hawk Down
Okay.
and Gladiator.
Gladiator. Yeah, classics.
First one, the second one sucked.
Yeah, I watched the second one just because I'll watch anything with Denzel in it, but yeah.
But then that makes you regret that, doesn't it? Because you're like, "Wait a minute, why is Denzel in this?
I mean,
What
but
is going?"
I even in that movie, I'm like, "Oh, just I love you so much." I think he's so
No,
good.
he's great. He's
You
great,
know,
but
funny story about Gladiator. I don't know if you know this, but like that, I think I've told this on this podcast before. Um, Russell Crowe, that the line, like I'm Maximus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife.
what a verbatim. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, that line, Russell Crowe was like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever read. I'm not saying this out loud. Like I'm not doing this on camera." And Ridley Scott was like, "Just do the line, whatever." And Russell Crowe was like, "Fine, I'll do the line, and I'm going to make it sound good because I'm the best actor in the world." And he had this massive blow up about it. Turns out that is the line from
100
Gladiator.
that's the
And
line.
yeah, and so since then, Russell Crowe's kind of been like, "Yeah, I was wrong about that line, obviously." But kind of funny.
I see it shows there's growth, right? He
Yeah,
learned.
always right.
Um, Yeah, so your results, what it was True Romance. I'm gonna put that one top now, even though I know it was Braveheart,
Yeah.
and then The Thing. Okay, so well, let's start with Braveheart, right? So what I learn about you from that answer is a few things, right? Um, One, like you're a fiercely loyal person. Loyalty is incredibly important to you, right? and and you're probably quick to let people in, but not so quick to trust them.
Mm,
Um, you expect a lot out of yourself. You have a good problem to have, and that is like your bar for you is extraordinarily high. Uh, where it's a problem is your bar for everyone else is sometimes extremely low. and and so a lot of times that can lead to disappointment, but then that turns into introspection, which then makes you feel like an asshole. And so like, that's a little bit damaging to your ego sometimes, the good side of your ego that you need to function on the planet. Um, True Ro
I'm assuming you're describing yourself too, because Braveheart is on your list as well.
My results from Braveheart are completely different.
Okay, okay.
Um, I think True Romance is good because, it it's good because you're kind of a fatalist, and I don't mean that in like a Nietzsche kind of way, but I mean that in like a, you know, I think being a fatalist sometimes lets us be open to certain things that maybe we wouldn't otherwise be, and a lot of times those are like those forever relationships and stuff that we didn't really see coming, right? Like you've seen my wife, like we don't look like we go together at all, right? Um, and then the thing I think is great because that is like the last perfect piece to Rich, right?
Mm,
And that is this like the belief in the ethereal, right? Like the belief in the impossible, right? And to me, that's what I glean from that is like, I mean, that is such a ridiculous, premise for, and so, yeah, yeah. You're not only comfortable, but you invite opportunities to suspend disbelief and experience existence.
gosh, man. I First of all, I think you're pretty much dead on accurate with your
Yes,
with your assumptions there. But it's funny, especially like the suspension of disbelief. Like especially going into a movie, I'm like, yeah, get ready to suspend disbelief. Like commit to the bit, guys. Like
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
much better if you do that. That's why I like horror so much because it just if you commit to it and let yourself go there, you get to feel things that you don't get to feel in normal life, and it's
sure.
really amazing. That's so fun, man. This has been a really, really cool talk. I'm very excited to listen to it again, and it's just been awesome catching up with you, brother. It really has. Where can people find you?
I'm on the internet. It's not a flex, but really, if you just Google Travis Crutcher, my website will pop up, my social handles will all pop up, books, all that
Awesome.
junk.
We'll
But
make
yeah,
sure
dude.
you get that too. We'll get it into the show notes and everything too, so you can kind of read it there.
And now you're next, right? You're coming on my show next.
I'd love to. Just tell me when. Tell me when.
Hell yeah.
We'll do it. We'll do it up again, and hopefully this thing gets published, and whatever we didn't cover here, we'll get into on your show.
Heck yeah, dude. Can't wait. This has been a blast, dude. For real, like I kind of in where we started, like it paid off, right? This is an awesome conversation. Really enjoyed the heck out of it. But truthfully, and I mean this like from the subcockle region of my black and little heart, right? Like I'm really jazzed to reconnect, dude.
Yeah,
Like really stoked about that.
me too. Cool. Thanks so much, brother. This has been awesome. I'm gonna think about this one for a little bit. This is pretty cool.
Heck yeah, man. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Travis.
Bye.
Wow. Okay. Hopefully this worked.